Time and time again, as an account supervisor at Marshall Communications, Greg has stepped up with innovative and quick-thinking solutions to our clients' problems. From social media to broadcast media to press releases, he does it all, and he does it calmly, thoroughly, and efficiently. Greg's sports background and his competitive nature fuel his passion for strategic marketing and powerful branding ideas, and he loves sharing his knowledge. His enthusiasm is contagious, and participants of his webinars and workshops leave energized and eager to put his tips and techniques to use for their own organization. It's also one of the reasons I invited him on the podcast today to talk about what we should all be watching out for in 2020. Greg was on the podcast in 2019, and if you want to learn more about him and his background, be sure to listen to episode number 28 of the PR Maven Podcast. Welcome to the PR Maven Podcast, a podcast all about growing your network and building your brand through traditional and digital networking techniques. I'm Nancy Marshall, the PR Maven and CEO of Marshall Communications. I've been strengthening brands through PR for over 35 years, and now I'm celebrating the success of executives, influencers, business owners, and entrepreneurs from all around the world, all of whom have cultivated their brands and broadened their networks through traditional and digital networking methods. Each week, I interview one of these interesting and influential individuals and provide an opportunity for you, the PR Maven Nation, to gain insights from their strategies and stories. So stay tuned for this week's episode, and thanks for listening. Welcome to the PR Maven Podcast, episode number 72, presented by Marshall Communications, creator of the Marshall Plan's 65-step strategic process. For those of you new to the show, I'm your host, Nancy Marshall, the PR Maven and CEO of Marshall Communications. Welcome to all of the PR Maven Nation listeners today. This podcast provides my unique perspective on the world of public relations and personal branding, including actionable takeaways. I want to emphasize the importance of enhancing traditional relationship building with today's new technology. Every week, the podcast features interviews with successful industry leaders, top executives, and media personalities from around the globe. This week, we're catching up with Greg Glynn, account supervisor at Marshall Communications, to break down the top 10 marketing, PR, and personal branding headlines to watch in 2020, and also give you tips on how you can leverage the latest trends. Greg, welcome to the PR Maven Podcast.
Thanks, Nancy. It's great to be here and really excited to share these tips with everyone today.
Well, I'm excited to hear them myself, actually. I mean, I've looked them over, but you did all the homework, and I'm just going to chime in as you start with number 10.
Absolutely. So these are really based on our experience and what we've seen as emerging trends in marketing and PR and personal branding. So we're going to touch really on about 10 topics that are going to be, I think, making headlines in 2020, and then also some tips so that you can stay ahead of the game or your competition and be ready for a great new year. So before we dive into our list, you might want to write these down, right, Nancy? So you'd probably love one of our popular things to do pads. So you can enter to win one of Nancy's PR Maven Nation things to do pads at prmaven.com/giveaway. And I think now we're ready for the official list.
Yes, we are. Actually, if you know me, I love writing things down. I write things down in a lot of different places. It's a little bit of a problem, but I do love lists. Yes, I know you do too, Greg.
Absolutely. So here comes number 10. We'll start with chatbots. Now, if you're not familiar with what it is, obviously a chatbot is a piece of software that conducts a conversation. It could be auditory or it could be text. Most of the time, this is usually found on a website where it looks like someone sound is actually talking to you, but a lot of it is actually artificial intelligence. You're typing something in, and it may have a keyword, and all of a sudden that robot or the chatbot produces an answer to your question. We're starting to see these a lot more on websites, and the Wall Street Journal recently reported that chatbots are already getting smarter. Drift.com is expanding the rollout of the chatbot platform that features context switching. Now, this is obviously hard for a robot or a machine to be able to do, but the technology allows it to respond to customers even if they switch topics, a task that's, as we said, hard to sometimes do if it's not a real human being. But there's also chatbots being linked to sales tools. HubSpot uses chatbots where you can basically build a profile on a prospect based on their questions and then retarget them, or in some cases, the owner of the company might get an email or an instant message saying someone is contacting you right now on your website. And Nancy, as the owner of a company, you'd love that.
Yes. Well, actually, I have a business relationship with a web company because the owner was actually monitoring his site when I went on his site, and he said, "How can I help you?" And I said, "Oh, hey, I'm interested." And it actually was a human. So I don't know if that qualifies as a chatbot,
Right.
but you know how I'm really into the personal touch and building relationships. So all I can say about chatbots is make sure they're smart bots, not stupid bots, because there's nothing that turns me off more than some chatbot that just wastes my time. It's kind of like when I had to call my cable company this morning, and by the time I get to a human being, I've got really high blood pressure. So make sure that you choose a good chatbot if you're going to go down this road. Of course, I think it's a great idea, but don't go cheap and try to just do something that, is not going to have, you talk about artificial intelligence. Make sure it has any kind of,
some intelligence.
Yeah, right.
All right. Number 9 is digital marketing. Now, obviously, this is a huge topic, but this space really continues to grow in my mind at a rapid pace. Digital marketing can include marketing of products, services, digital technologies, mainly on the internet, but also including mobile phones, display advertising, and really any other digital displays. So think of it a little bit differently. And specifically, as more people really kind of cut the cord and get rid of cable, I think also watch out for the growth of OTT advertising, which stands for over-the-top advertising, and the landscape is evolving quickly. So including a recent addition to obviously a lot of these online subscription programs like YouTube TV, Hulu, Disney Plus has now joined the game, and there's other subscriptions and ad-supported video on-demand services. So again, this is something you might not think of when you think about digital marketing. Many people think of the internet, but this is where you're going to be able to really drill into specific audiences. Imagine being able to target an audience that watches a certain show every week or every month, and you're going to be able to kind of build your advertising around the content that they like.
Well, Greg, you know that this kind of thing gets me really excited. I feel like we're so lucky to be living in this era where we have the opportunity to target and identify customers online. I mean, it's so much easier than it was before the commercial internet. So you can't just ignore this. You've got to leverage it. So it does involve learning, but there are a lot of resources out there. Mm-hmm. And so I say, yes, digital marketing, just don't ignore it.
And my tip here is actually for some of the larger companies that may be spending money on TV advertising, and it pains me when I hear companies talk about, oh yeah, we're spending money on ads, and we're not really sure what it's getting us. This is going to be so much better. You need to speak with your ad rep because they should be talking to you about OTT, because it's going to be a lot more targeted. If you want to reach a certain demographic or even psychographic, you'll be able to reach reach them. So keep an eye out for that.
Well, just a little plug for the Marshall Plan. When we're doing a Marshall Plan for a client, of course, that's one of the things we're doing is identifying those targeted personas. And we really flesh out those personas so it goes beyond the demographics and into the psychographics. So we really know not only whether it's male, female, or age or income, but we know what kind of car they drive and what kind of magazines they read and what kind of television they watch. So, you got to know your customer.
You should see my YouTube channel feed. You can select your favorites. I have so many golf videos on there. And then you flip over to Kelsey's and it's all cartoons and LOL dolls and everything. So you really can customize it based on the user. It's pretty unique. Number 8 is going to be social media, including the evolution of Facebook ads. Obviously, Facebook ads, I think, have come on the scene a lot stronger in 2019. Many companies, if not all companies, really are using them in some capacity or starting to think about it. It's really a pay-to-play world now. If you are on Facebook as a business and you are not doing Facebook advertising, you are not leveraging the power of Facebook. And as we know, social media always changing, Nancy, but there are certainly 2 specific things I think we should watch for related to social in 2020. It's the growth of Facebook advertising, because now there are more businesses and organizations realizing that you have to pay to play. I think they're also going to be realizing that the algorithm has changed a lot and the rules are changing so quickly. We're seeing it even with the election. They've had to change some of the ways that they are advertising and allowing people to advertise. So keep an eye out for that. And I also think to watch out for brands that are going to continue to be more authentic and personal online. This gets back to what you were saying about chatbots. It'll be interesting to see if there's a shift in how people get customer service, right? So many large companies have AI, much like you experienced with the cable company, in their phone systems. But in some cases, I don't think AI is the best way to handle detailed questions or concerns. And remember, in most cases, you can press 0 to try and get to a representative. I'm just like you, Nancy. If I have to yell help at the thing 4 more times, it really gets me going. But I think we're going to see longer wait times on hold because companies will be hiring fewer humans. And eventually, 5 to 10 years from now, I think brands with really good customer service will certainly stand out.
Well, yeah, I believe that brands with good customer service stand out now, obviously. And a lot of that is having the human touch or the personal touch. So absolutely, again, with social media, I feel like it allows us to connect with our customers, but don't forget that ultimately you want to connect in person too and create opportunities to meet with your customers face to face.
And one tip here on Facebook ads, be careful and make sure you know what you're doing, because we've actually seen situations where some businesses are bidding against themselves for Facebook ads. So you definitely don't want to be doing that. And at Marshall Communications, we can certainly help. Number 7, the presidential election. Now, there's no better test or measure, Nancy, of a person's personal brand than the presidential election in the United States. Everything's on the table, right? Everything in the candidate's life, going back to their childhood, is on the table. So when you look at the candidates, I think certainly Donald Trump and Bernie Sanders have the strongest personal brands and are certainly most probably recognizable. But I think there are 2 things we can learn from both of them, and I think that one of them is their values and what is most important to them, and they also repeat their key messages time and time again. So I think that's something to look at when you think about their personal brand. And the other thing is they're both extremely confident. When they talk, they not only talk loud.
Oh, good. I have something in common.
I was going to say, I think I know someone else who might do that.
Maybe I should run for president.
They also, though, make it clear what they stand for and what they are saying, and they don't waver in their message or in their tone of voice. And being confident really is a staple of someone with a strong personal brand. So I think here's a tip, right? From a PR perspective, plan on how the presidential candidates could impact your business or your organization. You should think about how you're going to need to adjust course and what the positive or negative impacts could be based on whomever wins the election. And as part of this tip, I also think keep an eye out for what the campaigns do with their marketing and the targeting of their base to see what happens in the final stretch in November. We can learn a lot as marketers about what they're going to try and do.
Yes, there's so much you can learn from. Some people don't care for politics or politicians, but they do have a lot of communications techniques that we all can learn from, including planning out their messaging and responding to questions in a way that allows them to communicate their key message.
So number 6 on our list is the implementation of video. And video has been a growing trend, obviously, for several years. But I think in 2020, it's likely the year that it becomes even more important to get on board. And really, if you look at it, this year, Nancy, at Marshall Communications, we produced more video content for our agency and for our clients than we have in our nearly 30 years. And that includes everything from how-to videos, like how to find the flash briefing for the PR Maven podcast, to employee videos. And then for our clients, we've done shoots from local farms to recorded PSAs for the trek across Maine. So it's a lot of different ways that you can use video, but it certainly is something you should be thinking about and should be on your list for 2020.
Well, of course, you and I both have backgrounds in broadcast. I started my career with Maine Public Television, and you started yours with the Portland Pirates, handling all the broadcast for them. So this is an area that we're really comfortable with and enjoy doing.
And I also like it because you can show somebody something instead of telling them. So I think it's a really powerful medium for that. Can't replace video. You can't replace videos and allowing people to see what you're talking about.
Well, and I think it's really important that you're authentic. When you create a video, it's important to let your authentic self shine.
Absolutely. I like that. And then also, I think as part of this, watch out for vlogs. So those are video blogs, and they also tell a story. So I suggest that people use more video in their marketing, their PR, and their personal branding work. Use it on your website. We've done this. We've added more video content for our site in 2020, and it shows that trends are right now showing that website visitors don't want to read long paragraphs anymore. They want content, they want it fast, and it's why YouTube is the number 2 search engine behind Google. So get your videos together, get them online, and really use them to your advantage.
I agree, absolutely.
So one of the things that we're going to do here is we'll continue this conversation, Nancy, but I'll let you take us to break.
We will continue our conversation and list of the top 10 marketing, PR, and personal branding tips for 2020 in a moment. But I wanted to share with you about how you can connect with me about the podcast. We have created the PR Maven Podcast listener line, and I'd like you to call me at 207-620-9075 right now to get in touch with me to ask questions or share feedback or ideas for the podcast, including who you would like to hear on the show as future guests. I look forward to hearing from you. And when we come back, we'll have the tips at the top of our list, so stick around. This podcast is all about growing your network in order to strengthen your brand. In my 30-plus year marketing and PR career, I have seen many organizations waste their precious time and money on marketing because they're trying to obtain success without any strategy to achieve their goals. So many organizations and companies suffer from what I call the shiny object syndrome, trying every new fad that comes down the pike. That's why I created the Marshall Plan 15 years ago. We have done over 100 of these plans for clients, helping them to get out of their day-to-day routine to identify their goals, solidify their brand story, focus in on their ideal customer avatar, analyze their strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, and create a realistic budget and measurement dashboard. We create the Marshall Plan collaboratively with our clients over the course of 3 months. We have a 65-step process to create a highly customized, actionable plan. And it's not like we come in and say, we are the consultants from away and we know everything. Instead, we come in and say, let's sit down at the table with your leadership team and we'll bring our expertise in what's working in PR and marketing. And our client team brings their knowledge of what's working in their organization. And together we come up with a really amazing plan. For many, it's been a transformative process. I have watched how teams have come together and their faces light up because they have such a sense of accomplishment and they're so excited about the future of their organization. We help our client figure out the best way to implement the plan, sometimes using people within their organization and sometimes with our help. We would love to chat with you about how you can expand your network and achieve your marketing goals with a Marshall Plan. Go to marshallpr.com/MarshallPlan to learn more about the process, or better yet, send me an email at nancy@prmaven.com and we'll set up a time to talk and get started. And now back to our conversation. Welcome back, and let's dive right back into our list of marketing, PR, and personal branding trends and tips for 2020.
All right, Nancy, you're going to love this one. Number 5, podcast.
Yay! I love podcasts!
There are currently more than 800,000 podcasts. 245,000 of those were created in 2019. And I think that obviously the PR Maven podcast being one of the recent ones is a terrific accomplishment, Nancy. So you should be very proud of that. We know what it takes now to put together a podcast.
Yes, it's more than you might think, but it has just opened up all kinds of new avenues for my career. I've been just so delighted to discover podcasting.
And I'm predicting this year, Nancy, that the podcast industry will make significant strides in an industry standard for measuring the success of listeners for a podcast. This is a problem right now in the industry because it's so new. No one right now can, for example, use Nielsen or Arbitron ratings like you might have with TV and radio. There is no consistent way to measure the same for all podcasts. So I think we're going to start to see, especially from the IAB, which is the Interactive Advertising Bureau that really empowers the media and the marketing industries to be able to have a consistent guidelines. And I think they're going to help us provide some clarity, because imagine if you were to approach as an advertiser a podcast and they say, oh yeah, we get 20,000 listeners and we have these many big numbers. Well, there's no way to actually justify that other than looking at their stats on a platform like Libsyn to be able to show that. So it's going to be really important. I think it's going to show more transparency. And I think that we're going to keep an eye on that, because Triton Digital actually will start producing monthly podcast reports that'll cover the top networks and the top podcast. So they'll do 13 reports a year, and that'll be a really cool thing in the industry to see what podcasts are actually the most popular. So something to keep an eye on for sure.
Of course, the PR Maven podcast was named to the top 10 list.
Absolutely. For FeedSpot's top 10 personal branding podcasts of 2019. So congratulations for making that list, Nancy. That's pretty impressive.
Thank you for all your help.
Absolutely. And then I think also, by the way, I think we need to keep an eye out here for how people listen to their podcasts, right? So this is evolving. We're starting to see it in the newer cars. They're having these players built into the consoles. And by the way, if you still have a cassette tape player in your car, first of all, that's probably not the worst thing wrong with your car. And second of all, it's probably time for a new car.
Right.
And you could probably be listening to podcasts as you drive to work. So from our experience, here's my tip. Basically, plan for a podcast to take 3 to 6 months to professionally launch it. If you're looking for a plan and you want to know where to start, certainly at Marshall Communications, we've created podcast plans for clients who want a strategic start and a successful podcast. And you can learn more at marshallpr.com/podcasting. We'll also put a link in our show notes.
Yes, well, we were very blessed to have the opportunity to work with Memic this past year and help them launch the Safety Experts podcast. So I'm very excited about listening to that.
So number 4 on our list, Nancy, is search engine optimization and Google's BERT. So if you don't know what we're talking about, well, it doesn't have to do with Bert and Ernie on Sesame Street. BERT actually stands for Bidirectional Encoder Representations from Transformers.
Oh, my gosh.
How about that for an acronym? But according to searchengineland.com, BERT will impact 1 in 10 of search inquiries, and it's the biggest change in search since Google released RankBrain 5 years ago. So many people will be wondering, can you optimize for BERT? And it's unlikely, but Google has shared that the search engine optimizers can't really optimize yet like RankBrain, but experts know that Google is getting better and understanding natural language. So there's a lot of different ways you can see how BERT might increase or decrease your search engine optimization. We're going to put a link in the show notes, but basically, as part of my tip here, when it comes to SEO, we really encourage you to revisit your keywords. Write out the content that is relevant and designed specifically for the target audience visiting each page of your site. And for specific pages, you want to write for, as you say, Nancy, the long tail of the web, which means creating very detailed copy for a specific element or aspect of your business organization.
Well, yeah, the long tail of the web is something, again, that we are so lucky to live in this day and age when if you're doing something that is very targeted, for example, in 2019, we worked with the famous Kochmar organ in Portland, Maine, and that's a very famous pipe organ. There are only 2 municipal pipe organs like that in the U.S., one in Portland and one in San Diego. And through the long tail of the web, you can identify people all over the world who are interested in traveling to see these pipe organs. Now, that's something that, like back in the old days, you would have had to send out a brochure and hope that they would inquire, and you'd send something by mail. And, you know, basically it was really hard. And now it's so much easier. Yep. And it has to do with optimizing by page on your site, as you say, Greg.
And also, I think important, another tip, if you're not doing this now, make sure you're bullieting out some of the features. Don't just put all the facts into a paragraph. Google actually, and other search engine optimization tools, it's a lot easier to read words or to have optimized content if they're bulleted lists.
Well, you know, you can say a lot about SEO from a technical perspective, but I think if you boil it down to make your site readable for humans and make the site connect with humans. So humans like to be able to scan things easily on bulleted lists also. So, I mean, that's SEO for idiots.
Very good. I like that. So we'll certainly be watching this for our clients, and you can expect certainly more headlines on BERT in the future. Number 3 is content marketing.
Ooh, I love content marketing. I'm so excited about content marketing.
So the world famous Seth Godin, entrepreneur and blogger, calls content marketing the only marketing left. It's authentic, useful, and perfectly suited for the internet generation. So what is content marketing? Well, it's really a type of marketing that involves the creation and sharing of online material, such as videos, blogs, social media posts, that does not explicitly promote a brand, but is intended to stimulate interest in its products or services.
Well, content marketing, you know, it was started back in the 1950s and 60s by companies like Procter & Gamble that actually wanted to create soap operas to build an audience of housewives who would then buy their soap. So if you think about soap operas, those were stories that were on television and people would gather around and watch them every day. And so as you're creating content, think about doing something that's like a soap opera. Put stories out there about human beings or about people experiencing your brand, but don't make it salesy.
Yeah, there's a difference.
Tell an interesting story that connects with your targeted audience, and that's what content marketing is all about.
Absolutely. And today's podcast really a great example of content marketing. We're sharing our advice and tips about marketing, public relations, and personal branding, which we know is relevant to our audience and has value to you, the listeners. So then you can certainly draw conclusions on whether or not some of this information is important or relevant to you. And we hope that certainly portions of it, if not all of it, are. But we're here. We're not telling you to buy something. We're not here selling anything. We're providing value so that you can share that content. Hopefully, you might find it helpful, helps maybe keep Marshall Communications top of mind when you or someone else needs PR, marketing, or personal branding services. And really the goal of content marketing is to get people to know, like, and trust you. And in addition to this podcast, we also encourage you to check out Seth Godin's podcast, and we'll have a link to that in our show notes.
And there's also an amazing conference in Cleveland in the fall called Content Marketing World. I attended it for the first time last fall, and I hope to go back this year again. And that's a really great opportunity to really be on the cutting edge of what's happening in content marketing.
Absolutely. Number 2 on our list is privacy, and this goes right into the GDPR that was talked about a lot in the last few years and will certainly be a hot topic with California's CCPA, and that is the California Consumer Privacy Act that is now in effect. It started at the beginning of January, and it is going to impact things from the business perspective, but also from the user perspective. You're going to get a little bit more control, and here's how this basically breaks down. So when we talk about the GDPR, we talked about the General Data Protection Regulation. That went into effect back in 2016. It's a regulation of the European Union law on data protection. Now, when it comes to the California Consumer Privacy Act, this actually is here in the United States and has already taken effect, which means companies, if you haven't, have a very limited time to get a handle on this. And I've already started to see emails, and maybe you have as well, Nancy. We've updated our privacy policies, or all these types of email. Even when you get on a site, it's now saying we've updated our privacy policies, because they recognize that they have to comply with this law. And at the end of the day, basically it means that you get the chance to tell the company whether or not, or how they're going to be able to use your information, and if they're going to be able to sell it or benefit from it. So it gives the consumer a lot more power over their information than has been in the past.
Yeah, so as a consumer, that makes me feel really good, actually. As a marketer, it's going to make things a little more complicated.
Yep, and I would suggest people take a look on a lot of different sites. The major ones now are starting to comply, so you can see what their privacy policies look like and be able to benefit from what they're trying to do to keep up so that you don't fall behind the 8 ball. We'll also have a link to it, more information about this exact topic and what you can do in our show notes. So make sure you check that out. And then we are getting ready here for a chance now for number 1. And number 1 in my mind is artificial intelligence and smart devices. We talked a lot about smart and stupid on this podcast.
Make sure you've got smart, not stupid devices.
So make sure that smart device is operated by a smart person. By the way, of course, smart devices now even more important here in the state of Maine, where we have the hands-free driving law. So that's another thing that people are going to need to start to rely more on smart devices, such as the Amazon Echo that is now available in your car. You can have Amazon right there with you. But according to the Pew Research Center, about 1/4 of Americans now own a smart speaker, and that's a wireless voice-activated device that utilizes a virtual assistant like Amazon's Alexa or the Google Home. There's also the Facebook portal. You might have seen some ads ads around the holidays for that, featuring the Muppets. That even has a motion sensor camera in it, which is really cool. It will follow you as you move around. If you're working on dinner or you're talking to it and you move left or right, it will actually follow you. So how about that? And then smart speaker owners tend to be younger than 50, with 32% majority of the users between 18 and 29. Now, the survey also noted that 34% of smart speaker users earned more than $75,000 a year and have some college education, usually white or Hispanic, and only 18% lived in rural areas. And one of the reasons why is because access to high-speed internet can certainly be a problem. So my tip here on this one is make sure your website has content that search engines can find and read easily. For example, most of the time, Alexa will pull information from Wikipedia or WikiHow. Do you have content on those sites? If not, you should think about how you could.
And we can help you with that too, just to put in a little plug. But I know that I ask Alexa every morning for my flash briefing, and I have a certain number of things queued up, including the PR Maven podcast flash briefing. But another one that I really like is America's Test Kitchen. You know, I have a little video screen, and so
do you have a show, an Amazon show?
It's an Alexa device.
It's a show. Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So I see the people on America's Test Kitchen, and they're demonstrating sometimes how to cut an onion or how to make a souffle or something, and I like watching that. And yeah, so I mean that's an example of content that because I like to cook and entertain and. So I connect with that for sure.
And one of the things from a PR perspective I enjoy, I have a CNN flash briefing, so I don't have to sit there and watch the news to figure out the top 5 stories of the day. They actually, in theirs, which they also have a video flash briefing as well, boom, it's in 2 minutes. You get all the video, and it tells you everything you need to know as you head out to start your day.
Yeah, it's really very exciting.
I know, you and I get jazzed up about it. So basically, here's a bonus tip. Your business or organization could create a flash briefing to stay up to date basically every morning on things that are important to you or your business. And you can actually access the PR Maven podcast flash briefing that Nancy talked by using the Alexa app and going into skills and games. That's where you'll find a lot of these flash briefings. So make sure you check that out. All you have to do is search for the PR Maven podcast flash briefing. We'll also put some instructions here in the show notes. And if you're looking for more information really on any of these topics, Nancy, and want to create a strategic plan for how you can leverage these trends in technology in 2020, we can certainly help with that.
Yeah, we could actually. That's what we love to think about, and that's what we love to do. So, yeah, thanks for compiling this really great list, Greg. And I think we should put this list right into the show notes in case people want to refer to them.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah. So PR Maven Nation, that wraps up this week's podcast. And I want to thank Greg Glynn for joining us today and compiling this fabulous list of trends that we need to pay attention to in 2020.
Well, thank you very much, Nancy, for having me. And I want to wish all of our PR Maven Nation a very happy and healthy new year.
That's right. Well, I told Tanner when I came into the studio today that I'm actually, believe it or not, I'm happy that the holidays are over because I like getting down to business and back into the routine. And I feel like we're into the routine for 2020. So that's great. If you have any questions for Greg or would like to hear more about a certain topic or from a certain person on the podcast, feel free to email me at nancy@prmaven.com. And I want to remind you that this podcast is presented by Marshall Communications, the creator of the 65-step Marshall Plan strategic process. And to learn more about the Marshall Plan, visit marshallpr.com. And a reminder about Alexa, if you have an Alexa device, you can say, Alexa, play the PR Maven podcast, and you can pick today's episode or a previous episode. And you can also enable the skill to receive the daily PR Maven podcast flash briefing with tips and advice from each episode. Thanks again for tuning into the PR Maven podcast. We appreciate your listening and encourage you to share this podcast with your friends and coworkers and let them know they can find it on their favorite podcast player. Remember to go out there, build your relationships, embrace the new technology, and have a great week, PR Maven Nation. That's it for this week's episode. I'd like to thank you for listening, and if you feel that you've gotten value out of today's conversation, consider leaving a 5-star review on iTunes or whatever app you're using to tune in. If you haven't subscribed yet, you should do so. I release a new episode each week, and subscribing will make sure you get an alert when there's a new episode. You can also join the PR Maven Nation by going to prmaven.com/nation and clicking join. It's free, and it's a great community of like-minded individuals who are all looking to learn and grow from one another. If you have an Alexa-enabled device, be sure to add the PR Maven Marketing Minute to your daily flash briefing menu. Thanks again for listening, and have a great rest of your week, PR Maven Nation.